Hey folks, it's Jeremy, the host of Blammo. Thanks so much for listening. This is a preview of one of our exclusive shows on Patreon. These are member-supported shows, meaning they only happen because of our incredible members and community. So check out a preview of the episode, and if you like it, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/Blammo, where we have tons of exclusive Blammo episodes, shows, our amazing Slack group, and we're adding new things for members all the time. If not, no worries, we still love you, and we literally have hundreds of episodes of Blammo all free for you to dive into. Thanks so much.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Workwear podcast. My name is Derek Guy, and my co-host is Peter Zotolo. So, having written about men's clothing now for almost 15 years, one of the questions I get most often is, how do I find a tailor? What do you think of this custom tailor, and what do you think of this custom project I'm thinking about going into? Often these are people who are trying to get wedding suits. And I have always strongly recommended that people try ready to wear first, because custom clothing is fraught with problems and potential downsides. But then if you do go into custom clothing, there's also the question of whether you should go for made to measure and bespoke. So although Peter and I have talked about some of these issues in previous episodes, I thought we would just do one full episode on custom clothing, in answering some of these questions. How do you find a tailor? Should you go into custom clothing? And how do you find a tailor? And what are the differences between made to measure and bespoke? Let's dive in.
Hey, Derek.
Hey, Peter.
How are you?
Doing really well. I saw you recently post on Instagram this like all black Johnny Cash kind of outfit that you recently got at Taylor's Keep.
This is what I'm wearing right now. It's a black gabardine, very lightweight. Lighter than what I initially wanted, but they steered me to go light. And I'm glad I did, because when it's hot, you don't want anything terribly heavy. And contrary to common opinion, it does get kind of hot in San Francisco.
It gets warmish.
Warmish.
I think anyone in any other climate would laugh at this idea.
Did you see the headline the other day when they said heat wave in San Francisco? And it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, people are dying in the 110s, 120s.
Yeah. It gets like mid 80s. I mean, on the worst days, it'll get up to like low 90s, but it's been mid 80s. But is that shirting weight or suiting weight?
It is suiting.
Wow.
It's about 250 grams, so relatively light, 8-9 ounces.
Okay. Heavy for a shirt.
Heavy for a shirt. I would never get this as a suit, although I may get a jacket made in this same fabric. I'm not quite sure.
Do you normally wear anything under the shirt?
I don't. This is actually my first time wearing it open with a mesh shirt, also black underneath. And I like it because, well, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's a wide silhouette. The pants are based off of pants that both you and I have gotten from Taylor's Keep before. So they have a really nice way of following the seam and incorporating it in the slanted pocket. They have hand finished everything. It's really, really well done, well tailored, but it has more of a straight fit. Very deep pleats, which I like, almost 3 inches deep. If you were to open it up, it would be about 3 inches. So it's a lot of fabric, but gabardine, one of the things that I love about gabardine is it drapes really, really beautifully. And it's great for summer. I may get the same outfit in a slate blue.
Wow.
It's a really, really nice color. I'm really a big fan of this. It's about 10, 11 inches around. So the leg opening is bigger than what I'm accustomed to, but it's not overly so. It still has a straight silhouette.
It's an unusual cut. So did you do like basting stages? Like how did you figure out the design as you were going along?
The design was based off of 90s Ralph Lauren suit that I have. So it's a higher waist. It's a straight cut. And that particular fabric is not very heavy either. It's probably closer to 10, 11 ounces. But I wanted something very decidedly summer and something that I could wear together or I could wear separately. So in lieu of wearing a suit, which in some occasions can be too much, or just some people don't feel comfortable wearing a full suit, I wanted something that has a suit-like feel. Stofa is really good about that. They can piece things together or you can wear them separately. But the end result is something that has that suit idea.
Yeah.
So it's easy, it's brainless, but it still looks elegant. It still looks like it's something that is put together.
That's true. The outfit, it does have a slight Stofa kind of vibe. It's like suitish, but it's unique. It's suitish. It's modern. It's contemporary. Stofa is one of the very few lines that does that idea well.
They do, and I'm pushing Tailor's Keep, and they mostly do suits. They do some casual stuff, but I'm pushing them to do ready to wear. So this was a prototype that we worked on so that they can do this in a ready to wear format, so that the pants will be unhemmed. The suits will have probably different neck sizes, but nothing too specific because it's meant to be worn open. The shirt is based off of 1950s vintage gabardine shirt that I have that has the same type of pockets. So they're patch pockets with a flap, but the flap, a rounded flap. So very similar to those that were just post World War II. And it has a hidden snap button. So you can, because sometimes these things have a tendency to flap open or stay open. And the collar is a one-piece collar, also with hidden snap buttons. So it has a really nice roll. The shoulders are dropped, so they extend a good bit beyond my natural shoulders. A normal shirt would look like that. And that's because I wanted to give it a silhouette similar to a suit. So the nice thing about a suit is that it does extend your shoulder line. It does give you a really nice shape. Shirts can't really do that unless you extend the shoulders a bit. And it obviously won't be as shapely as a suit would with canvassing and with shoulder pads, but it gives a similar effect. And then the hem is straight, so it can be tucked in, or as I'm doing now, it can be worn untucked with a t-shirt underneath a tank top. So it can be worn in a bunch of different ways. And it's gabardine, so it's a suiting fabric, but not so suity where you can't wear them as separates.
That brings to mind a question that I often get from readers, people who are eager to try out custom tailoring. You went kind of almost an extreme route because you're trying something like a totally new design. Yeah. Which is something that I would normally highly recommend against. Yeah. Because essentially when you do something like that, if you think of ready to wear, a designer will do a sample. They'll work with a pattern maker, create a sample, and that sample sometimes goes through multiple iterations. Right. Before they nail it down, and then they say, okay, we're going to grade this to different sizes, so on and so forth. So if you are doing that kind of a unique project with a custom tailor, you'd have to be willing to accept a high chance of it not turning out the way that you want. Well, first, you'd have to find a tailor who's willing to take on a unique project. Yeah. You'd have to accept a high probability of it not turning out the way that you imagined. And then, the process of kind of making that garment to finish, you're also kind of like, what a designer would do, they would be making a sample as if a designer would make multiple samples. So you're like, it's risky. But it does also bring to mind many people, I often get questions from people who are trying to decide what tailor to go with. And I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on how to choose a tailor either for something as unique as what you did or just a custom suit?
Well, it really depends on what you're going for. If you have a specific look, for example, if you say, I like a British cut, or I like an American cut, or I like an Italian style, then I would choose tailors that do that well. Like you've seen examples of them on Instagram or on their website or on people. Sometimes different people in the media will wear specific designers and certain tailors. And so you can say, oh, I like that. That person obviously does it well. And so I'm going to go with that person.
Go to the tag section of their Instagram.
Yeah, go to the tag section. Sometimes they'll mention what they're wearing. Sometimes they'll mention the tailor or the stylist that they use. So if you're getting a suit, I would go that route. I would ask people online. Some people are very willing to share who they use. I don't think they're trying to hashtag mystery bespoke tailor. Just a few people
I would try to get candid, if possible, try to get candid conversations. Private candid conversations, because I think people are more willing to share their disappointments with a tailor in private than in public. Saying. Yeah. It's sort of one of those things where, like, if someone bought a pair of Meerman or Alan Edmond shoes, they'll pour over it with a microscope and like just say it's just total crap and this and that. But if they spent 10 times the amount of money at a custom tailor, for whatever reason, they are less likely to slag that person off.
That's true. I wonder if it's because I have a feeling it's because they've developed a personal relationship with this bespoke tailor.
It's a personal, are you going to slag off some, like if you met the CEO of Allen Edmonds, are you going to go back home and say, this is such a crap company? Probably not. And the other thing is also you might be embarrassed that you just spent, $3,000 on a suit and it didn't turn out well.
Right,
versus
true.
if you spent, $200 on a pair of shoes, you might be willing to say like, don't buy from this company. So try to get candid conversations. But another thing is, I think people, I always recommend people on this. I always want to preface this. On any issue of custom tailoring, I strongly cannot emphasize this enough. I really think that most people should try ready to wear first, because chances are there's probably a ready-to-wear garment that will fit you with some alterations.
Yeah.
And the upside to ready-to-wear is you can put things back on the rack if you don't like it. Whereas no good custom tailor will give you a money-back guarantee. If you've come across a custom tailor that gives you a money-back guarantee, that person is banking on the ignorance of their customers.
Right.
Because nobody's going to produce a quality garment and then have you try it on and then you be disappointed and then they're going to refund you, because there may be many reasons why you're disappointed with the garment. You chose ugly details. You chose an ugly fabric. The garment may fit you perfectly, but you just happen to not like the silhouette on you. And that's not the tailor's fault. So they can't possibly afford to give you a money back guarantee. So strongly recommend trying ready to wear first, because it's such a safer route of building a wardrobe.
Is this in line with how your style journey has progressed? For example, did you jump immediately into bespoke, or did you try on Xenia or Polo or any number of things before you thought, okay, I kind of know what I like, and now I'm going to try bespoke?
So that is, I think unless you're like born a billionaire, probably most people tried ready to wear first. So I don't think I'm unique in that regard. I tried J. Crew, Brooks Brothers, Adelini, trying to think of some Ralph Lauren. There's definitely a lot of Ralph Lauren. And then I went into custom tailoring.
And what was it that was the springboard to go from ready to wear, despite the fact that it fit like 95% fine, into bespoke?
Well, the sickness of finding out that 5%.
Exactly.
So that is like awful.
It is.
So
it's
then
like,
you learn like the quarters are slightly too closed. And
right.
Would it look better if the waist button was a little bit lower? So
I wish that the sleeve would get 0.5 centimeters narrower as it goes to my wrist.
Learn like terms like sleeve pitch and collar gap, and So truly, the worst knowledge that you can. I went to get drinks with Harry after our interview with her.
Oh yeah,
and I mentioned to her that I introduced a bunch of people on Twitter to the term collar gap. We both laugh because this is not a term that will improve anyone's life.
No.
This will make your life worse because you were happy before.
And then now you can't unsee it.
Now you can't unsee it. So definitely, yeah. So partly that, and partly because I was fascinated with the craft. And then also partly because, and this gets into the thorn in my argument of definitely try. Well, I still think you should try ready to wear first, because then you'll find out if you like padded shoulders or soft shoulders, what silhouette you like, so on and so forth.
Right.
So certainly I think you should try ready to wear because you'll get an eye for what types of like silhouettes you like. But the slight thorn in my argument, two things come to mind. One, I remember, I don't know if it was Vox Victoria, but someone on Style Forum way back in the days, it was like in 2009 or so, said, if your house burned down, knock on wood, but if your house burned down and you had to start over again, what would you do? And many of the best dressed guys on Style Forum said, I would have just jumped directly into bespoke earlier. I wouldn't have even messed with the ready to wear stuff. So this story comes to mind. And the second story that comes to mind is George Fraser's essay, The Art of Wearing Clothes, which I think is, if not the best essay on men's clothing ever written, certainly top 5. And George Fraser said that the most elegant, the best dressed men in America at the time, he wrote this in like
60s?
Yeah, 60s. I was going to say either 1962 or 1968. It's one of those years. He said the best dressed men at the time all used custom tailors. And the third thing that comes to mind is that actually does reflect, like, when I look at many of the really well-dressed guys, both that like ramped up their wardrobe. Like I think of David Lane, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, he just became really well-dressed almost overnight.
Yeah, he did.
And it's because he found people who could help him. I also think of Patrick in Chicago, who used to post on the forum.
Oh, yeah.
And again, he just became really well dressed.
Newcomer
overnight.
also on the forum.
Yeah, newcomer.
He like
overnight.
And
it's just because they went to Chris Despos.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, they
That's
just
the common thread.
They just went to Chris Despos. I assume leaned on him for advice, and then they came out and they looked great.
Yeah.
So that was also something that I thought is notable. So I do think that if you happen to use a really good tailor, which the number is shrinking, there is something to be said. Like if you can find the right tailor, you really do like speed track your way into a really nice wardrobe. But the downside is that,
it's not cheap.
it's not cheap. You may go to a tailor. That tailor may be great. You might go to Chris Despos and you might find that it's not like Chris Despos is going to make everyone a great suit and you a crappy suit. It's just that you may not like that silhouette.
It may not turn out the way you want it.
Yeah. And then you put it on and it's just not what you imagined. And Chris is not going to refund you after putting all that work in the suit.
Right.
So there are so many risks and downsides to going with a custom tailor. What got you into Bespoke?
Oh, same thing.
Because you looked great in everything. So it is like
that's kind of you to say, but the same thing. I started to go into the forum and I had already been wearing suits for decades because I grew up wearing them, going to religious services and such. But being a menswear enthusiast and then finding out everything that you have right and then that 5% that you have wrong.
Yeah. Awful
it's awful. It's terrible. And then you look at your closet and you're like, is this 5% worth thousands of dollars? Yes, it is. Let me begin.
I think about that time we were both talking about one of your suits and looking at the mirror in the other room from where we're sitting. And your wife said, "Do you guys think that normal people notice stuff? They notice this stuff in real life?" It's like, no, zero chance.
No. Makes
no impact on the public.
No. However, I will say that you're correct. The majority of the public will never understand what exactly goes into it. But some of them may say, something's off.
Yeah, that's true.
And they won't be able to put their finger on what it is. And the sad thing, now that we know what it is, we're like, oh, man. Now I have to burn everything that I have that doesn't fit exactly correct.
Yeah.
And it's not just about fit too. It's also about the particular style and how you feel in those clothes. Like you can, now that you recognize what those clothes, the shape that it gives you, because with some guys, myself included, sometimes I'm just going to put on clothes, regardless of how it makes you look. Sometimes you just pick out whatever doesn't stink and you put that on so that you don't offend people as you walk down the street. But as you get to realize how you feel and not just how you feel, but the image of yourself, I guess I should say, that you're projecting, you think, do I want to do that? Or maybe this is too boring. Maybe I want to look like Rubinacci, or maybe I want to look like George Fraser, or maybe I want to look like Biddle. All these guys that dressed so well in the past, you think, how can I look more like Cary Grant? Or how can I look more like Kanye? I don't know, whatever you want to look like. These things all go through your mind, and now choosing...
Yeah. But the key is to never learn about these people.
It is.
Don't ever look up photos of George Fraser. Don't ever look up photos of any of these people. And then that's where bliss comes through. So because this is one thing that I struggle with, is that it's not only is Bespoke financially out of reach for many people, but it's also geographically can be out of reach, because
that's true.
If you live in the United States, almost all of the tailors are concentrated. The American ones are concentrated in New York City. And then a few other kind of big cities will have trunk shows. But if you don't live in those big cities, then you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
So something that I try to, when someone emails me and asks, how do I find a tailor, so on and so forth, again, cannot emphasize more strongly, you should try rated wear first, because you can put it back on the rack. But then I think if you're determined to go into custom, you should then think of whether you want made to measure or bespoke. So in the world of clothing, there's rated wear, which is what you can go into the store and touch and put on and put back on the rack. And then there's MTO, which is made to order, which is a company will have their stock kind of garments, but you can adjust them in certain ways. So you could say, I tried on this jacket, I like it. I just wish it came in like brown cotton or blue hopsack. Well, they can make it for you. Now it's made to order. And then the next level is made to measure, where you put on the jacket and you say, I wish the shoulders were a little bit wider. I wish the jacket was, an inch longer. Well, that's made to measure. Then they can change that for you. And then bespoke is where theoretically, although the world is a little bit more complicated, theoretically, a tailor will make something for you from scratch, which means drafting the pattern from scratch. The story is a little bit complicated by the fact that many tailors now use block patterns. Some bespoke tailors will essentially adjust a block pattern by hand and then make it straight to finish, which is sort of this in-between between made-to-measure and bespoke. In traditional made-to-measure...
Want to hear the rest? Listen to the full episode and many more other exclusive episodes over on our Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Blamo to sign up and join the Blam fam. You also get access to our exclusive members-only Slack group where we chat about this and a ton of other things. So head over to patreon.com/Blamo and we'll see you there.